What a pleasure. Thanks for coming out. Boy, we're playing winner this winter, aren't we? We're making it count. First of all, I want to congratulate each of you. What a harvest season did we have last Friday? The numbers come out. Congratulations, 176.6 bushel nationwide. Illinois, for the first time ever, was over 200 bushel per acre, which means you guys in this room are well over 220. For us to have 176 nation or 200 in Illinois means an awful lot if you had some 250 plus bushel corn, and I'm proud of you. It is a tremendous, tremendous success on your part. And we're going to continue to raise the bar, aren't we? You know, can you imagine how you and I be feeling right now if 220 was the top that any of us ever achieved this year? With the inputs where they are and with the grain price where they are, we'd have kind of a long face, but there's no need for long face. Tonight we're going to talk about things that you and I can do to put the excitement back into farming. I want you to love what you do. My job is to inspire you to look at every possible thing that we can. There was a unique survey taken of farmers all over the country. 31% of the farmers said that for them to be profitable, we absolutely are going to have higher corn price. And I think all of us would agree that would be fantastic. But these 25% of the guys are the ones that took my heart because they said, what we need to do to be profitable is to look at every input and manage our cost. And that's where we're at, isn't it? And there's times when it seems like we're just a little out of control. And so tonight I'm going to challenge you to get back on that horse. And we're going to ride that horse tonight. And there's times when it feels like when we have bank meetings and that, it just seems like this is not a lot of fun right at the moment. And I don't know where your comfort zone is. This gentleman on the right is 54 years old. He's from Eastern Illinois. And he gave up. And he rented his ground to a young farmer that's next to him, and he moved to Florida, and he's going to play golf. And that's what makes America great. We can all do our own things. But I'm going to challenge you. Not that I mind that you play some golf. Go ahead and play some golf by all means. But I want you to get back in the cab and start to gain control of your farming operation and start to take care of what we're going to talk about is the input management. And we're not going to give up. There is so much opportunity. Last year I started showing you our farm, and I told you that we took a very, very sharp pencil to our costs. And we started out saying, for our family, we had to cut $125 an acre of gravy out for us to be successful. And you can see all the different pieces that add up to that. And we said we have to get our break even last year down to $3.78. When I say our break even, I'm including every penny that we spend, whether that's on phones or insurance or 401k or our cash rents to our family that we pay to our family. All that's in there, and then what it takes to break even. And last year was $3.78. If there's one thing I want to challenge you on, and I blurred mine out because I don't think you need to see every little detail of our farming operation. Every bit of expenses by crop are in here. Every bit of our costs, labor, you name it, it's in there. And so I'm encouraging you to find somebody in accounting that loves spreadsheets. And if you can start to dissect it down, and you're going to know where the fat is, and you're going to have a good time challenging it. And there's nothing on the table that's sacred. You look here, no matter what we're doing, I analyze everything, including 20-inch corn, which I absolutely love. Corn on corn, which I absolutely love. And we're looking at all of it, and we're saying, where can we take cost out and put profit back in? Because this, I'm going to tell you, you get this figured out in the last 2 years, how to be profitable, and look out because prices swing. If you don't believe that, look at the Dow Jones and New York Stock Exchange, how that thing's gone. It's doubled in less than 5 years. What did they say the other day? We had a 1,000-point rally in 7 days. So markets move, and there's going to be 4.70, 5.25 corn again. And when it does, you guys are going to have fun. And Deere's going to have fun. And Case is going to have fun. And all the seed companies are going to have fun because we're going to learn how to farm in the conditions we're in. And not only farm, but we're going to be successful doing it. And we're going to grow our farms. So we look at everything, whether that's narrow row beans, putting our own nitrogen storage in, how are we going to change our nitrogen on the planter? You know, do we need to be in here doing some kind of an application of a fungicide early? What about specialty crops? Now, when you do those spreadsheets, in A Wonderful Life, Bank Potter here, obviously, I don't know what the farmer just said to him, but he's giving him the old snake eye, and he's not happy. He's saying, why do you need the third combine? Or whatever he just said. I'm not asking that. I want you to become Investor Warren. I want you to look for the opportunity because you're going to write checks this year, and there's going to be a reason why you write them. And so you shouldn't be scared to go in and sit down next to your banker and say, these are the things we're going to do, and the reason we're going to do them is because we're going to grab and put an imaginary number, $9 an acre here, $12 an acre more profit here. We're going to cut down $16 an acre out of this program. And those little, line upon line, precept upon precept, those small things add up to be big numbers, and before long, you're at the 125 reduction. Let me give you an example. 5 years ago in 2012, our home dairy, this is what that front 60-acre cornfield looked like, and this was painful. This was not fun. And you can see the soil types and what the stress that we had. And I looked at that and I said, we're not having that again. I told Cindy, I'm not playing this game ever again. There was places in here where the combine didn't make a sound because there was no ears coming in. And I challenged our team, and I said, we're going to go out, and we're going to look for alternatives. We're going to write some checks. In return, then, we're going to put in technology, such as drip tape in corn in the Midwest. This drip tape's 18 inches deep. Roots found it, and they have the ability to spoon feed. And then you go back to the next time that field was dry and look at the difference. All of a sudden, we took a cornfield that the best it ever was 175 to 180 bushel in that river bottom. In 2 years running, it's over 300. So drip tape has given us a chance to manage. We can't control the weather. So we're willing to invest at times. So let's take a look at where we were. I would just use our family farm. 5 years ago, there's no bones about it. I love corn. And we were 70% corn, a lot of corn on corn. And we were, we raised a few soybeans. You've heard me say it many times, they're weeds. I've changed my mind a little bit. $10 beans are pretty much fun. But 5 years ago, in 2012, I was looking at our family operation. I said, we are going to have to change. And we did for the first time, we put in some seed corn 5 years ago. And we said, we're going to need to look ahead. And I'm not sure we're going to be able to live on just corn on corn on corn, even though I believe all my heart the highest yields are going to come out of there. I believe we're going to build soil tilth. I just love the fact of what corn residue does as it goes down. And so you look at where we were last year, and you can see quite a difference, can't you? Now all of a sudden we're down from 70%, and we're only 29% commercial corn, 24% seed corn. Soybeans are back to 40%. And we got 6% of specialty crops. And you say, well, why do you want to mess around with some of that special stuff? And you look at the return after the break even. And you can see where commercial corn is. This shouldn't be any surprise to you over in the far right. You can see where the profitability is. Barely broke even, did we? And these are high yields. These are yields, like I said, if they'd have been 220, it'd have been really painful. And you can see where the soybeans were, and you can see where seed corn income is, and then you can see when you start to do some specialty crops. So as we diversify, and I don't know what your diversification is. I know you have opportunity to raise popcorn and sugar beets. There's probably, 12 states here tonight? And so you have all kinds of opportunity. Edible beans. Maybe it's out of your comfort zone. I don't know where your comfort zone is, but it's things that you and I are going to look at to say, for a few years, we're going to play this game, and we're going to see where it's at. So if you're going to do a lot of seed corn, you're going to be putting irrigation in. And the year we did our first year back in 2012, you know what the drought of 2012 looked like. Around me in that field, we were down to the south by Lincoln. And our neighbors chuckled and laughed. Greg and our team come in and we put in irrigation. They said, irrigation? You don't need irrigation, you need tile down here. And we needed that too. That irrigation paid for itself in 1 year. The 1,100 acres of seed around us averaged 10 bushel. That 200-acre seed field where we had irrigation averaged 93 in seed. Know the difference? They took more off of 200 acres, they told Aaron, than they did off 1,100 acres, semi-loads. And so these are the type of things that you start to go to Banker Potter and you say, you know, we're going to need to invest. This seed field is a pretty large system, and so you understand that the larger the system, the more, you know, in Texas, we don't have sections. We keep cutting them down because a 500-acre system, you just can't get around quick enough in hard weather. If you have a drought, you just can't get it fast enough. So we like, you know, systems that are only 160 acres maybe instead of 500. But this one's a good size. So we come out and we say, well, look at all of our different soil types here, uniquely different. This soil is not created equal. And so we're going to do VRI, in other words, variable rate irrigation. And the technology Grow Smart from Lindsay, it's phenomenal. So we're going to have our first system. That's a 405-acre system, but it'll have the ability, every nozzle can be spoon-fed exactly the rate of water, just like we do in variable rate population on corn. And because down here in this low ground, we don't hardly need any water. Now, we went ahead and pattern tiled this whole field. And so down here, we're in 30-foot patterns. We need to get water off. But up in here in some of these dry areas, you know, some of these pink areas, we need to put a lot of water on. And so that system, as it comes around, can put on 3/4 of an inch on this 50 feet, and over here might not only put on maybe a 1/10. And so those are things, the technology. So I'm willing to invest to make more. So I'm not scared to sit down with Banker Potter and give him the old snake eye back if we need to do that. We talk about specialty crops. And it looks pretty friendly here, and you say, boy, this looks like a pretty good deal. You saw the profitability from this. What's some of the issues here? Well, this is only raised in the United States in Morton, Illinois. The plant's just right here in town. And acres go up and down. So last year they needed a lot of acres. I think they had almost 10,000 acres. This year they only need 6,000, so you can't depend on it. And there's not just all gravy. Last night I had a guy come up afterwards and said, those are the worst looking jack-o'-lantern pumpkins he's ever seen. I said, you take the kids out here, it takes them forever to pick one because there's so many to look at. But here's some of the issues that happen when you get specialty crops and they're going to come in and harvest. It doesn't matter if it rained. We were hired to come in and fix this field 30 miles from us, and you can see there was some damage done in here that isn't repaired yet. We took the bullet across there in 2 different directions. And so you might have to go to Banker Potter and say, you know, I need to do some tile. This is a unique case. We had a 15-foot hill that we had to run through to get this 18-inch smooth wall. That tile's 15 feet underground, so we had some overburden we had to throw back. And those are things that can make quite a difference. And so in the tiling business with your plows, this changes farm dramatically. You can see the water, you can see the crop residue here. That farm never has produced a crop there in that 20-acre spot. And so every 30 feet we're in here putting a strip through them before long, it changes the paradigm. And so I'm willing to invest if I know about the return coming back. And so, but at the same time, the specialty crops are a very small part of it. The end of the day for our family, for Greg and Cindy's family, we're corn bean farmers. We're not going to have enough Libby pumpkins to make a difference. And so we better figure out the corn and the soybean side of it. And to do that, we're looking at all kinds of different opportunity. For us, conventional soybeans are the ticket. And so we can come in and raise non-GMO. We still have some Roundup-ready soybeans. You can see here our corn on corn's all under irrigation in the river bottoms. I'm not going to risk corn on corn in the market we're in. We're going to make sure it yields. And it's the highest yields this year. Corn on corn in the river bottoms was really putting it out. We're going to have some conventional corn. In regular corn, of course, we're going to grow the seed business as much as we can. Then we start to take a look at the profitability again, and all of a sudden we take out the pumpkins and the seed corn, and all of a sudden it starts to change the dynamics of this. And you say, well, maybe I have some acres where conventional beans pay. And for years we were planting, I'm not ashamed of it, early days we planted 100% Pioneer, and then it switched around. Pretty soon we were 99% DeKalb, and that's just the way it is, isn't it? You chase the good genetics. The neat thing is there's lots of genetics out there for us to take a look at. And we talk about non-traded corn. the price is something that gets pretty attractive. Now, we're going to have to come in and put $23 of insecticide on it. This is going to follow only on bean ground. We're not going to go to corn on corn in that. But you compare it over here to this side where you got all the technology and you start to look at your cost after discounts of $141 an acre and you say, whoa, that's a bite. That's going to take 17 bushel for us to make the difference. The interesting thing is some of the conventional hybrids, Sign, for example, had a number that went 302 on our variety plot that was the third highest there. So you just can't say, well, if we're going to be over on this side, we're going to be planting B-rated genetics. That's not true. They're out there and you can find them, and they'll yield just the same as a Smart Stack. Well, the difference is you and I are going to have to manage. We're going to have to get out and love that cornfield. We're going to be walking in it. We're going to be looking for corn borer. We're going to be looking for rootworm. We're going to be doing rootworm floats and salt water. We're going to see what's our counts of larvae. You're going to be watching for disease. So you're back to farming versus just writing the check for the insurance policy. You saw the profitability on the beans. It's no different. On the soybeans in this area over in Bloomington and Cargill, we got a market of $1.10 more a bushel. So if you have farms that don't have solid water hemp and you have an opportunity, you can buy the seed for less. Pioneer's got some pretty awesome genetics. And so you can see it's $12 less than the Roundup Ready seed, but you put that $12.85 back in an extra chemical, so that's a wash. Then you put the $1.10 premium, and you do it on good beans, and all of a sudden, you're looking at some pretty serious dollars. Banker Potter's got a smile on his face here. So those are things that we look at, and we say, how do we manage it? And when do you start planting beans? You know, for us, we're very fortunate. We got the planter where we can go out and we can start planting beans early. I was talking to some of you here from a little bit south of us, and they're telling me their beans were planted early. They started on the 10th of April, 90 bushel average of their early beans. Our super early beans were in the 90 bushel. And so you can see last year we started on 4/14. This year we started on 22nd due to some rain. This year, we're going to start early again. Will we freeze some beans off? Oh, yeah, we will. There's coming a day. It's not going to be perfect. We'll have to replant a field. But I tell you, I'm to this stage as I watch corn genetics and soybean genetics, I'm not sure if I was a one-planter family, I wouldn't plant beans first for a week, then plant corn, then come right back to beans. And I'd keep that corn planter pretty hot. I wouldn't be stopping for supper. I'd have one of the boys running it, and I'd keep that plant because we understand that 15 bushels is real. And so I planted all the conventional beans first because it's a no-brainer. Your planter's clean. You don't have to worry about any Roundup Ready seed getting contaminated. And our conventional beans, all farm average out yielded the Roundup Ready by 5 bushels. So it probably came from the fact it was somewhat early planted. But it's things you need to think about. So maybe your farm's at the crossroads and you say, you know what, Greg, we need to buy a second planter. That second planter, instead of going into corn, immediately go into soybeans. Talked to a grower from Manitou, Illinois. Had to replant a field on May 23rd. Nervous as a cat. Dryland corn down in Manitou, 275 all farm average on that replant, a big field. You talk to Ken Ferry, and he's telling you he's got clients that they replant. He was pushing and pushing and pushing to replant. Some of that late May corn went 300 bushel. Genetics seem to have a change in their system where some of the later corn seems to work really, really well. How many of you in here, raise your hand, how many of you had a really good yield out of a late May planting corn? Anybody? Yeah. Mike here is saying he did over in Indiana. And so I'm gutsy enough, I might start beans first. If I didn't have 2 planters. If I got 2 planters, I'm going to keep one on beans a while. Play the game. And watch your weather. I mean, don't get stupid about it. How many of you stopped planting on April 21st this year? Say yes, you should have. If you didn't, if you understand first cold drink. Probably the hottest thing I've ever done on social media. I don't know how many hits there were, but boy, was there some snarky comments. I just smiled. I thought, keep on planting. Because it's a great exercise because you get to replant. And we learn more, if we replant it twice. Let's talk about these little guys. Your heart starts pumping, don't you, when you see it? I just love corn. And you see these little guys and you realize they're off to a pretty good start. And they're pretty happy right now. They're living off of mama seed. And we talk about all the time, how do we get the best start possible? Remember the goal. Every seed I plant, I expect a 700x return. Better than better than the stock market in New York any day. 700x. I plant one of these, I expect 700 kernels back. I never plant a seed thinking, oh, well, if it doesn't grow, we'll be all right. Look at the temperature here today. So he's got a nice little mesocalo starting to come up, but we're at 53.2 degrees. How warm does your soil have to be before the soil particles will release phosphates? Your phosphorus off the soil does not become available until 65 degrees. So if you and I are counting on this little guy to be feeding happily here on this good black soil around him, we're missed. It's not happening. And so we need those early phosphates. And so 65 degrees is where that magic starts. So to encounter that, you're going to come out and you're going to put starter in. And we talk about it all the time. And what bushels do you want to use for starter? Ferry and I checked it over the years. And I would tell you there's 12 to 15 bushel. Pretty easy to start a fertilizer on corn planting in the early spring. And so we just said, let's be conservative. We used 10 bushel. And you can see here it went to $35 on a $3.50 corn market. And so we look at that, and you can see that's going to cost for 1034.0. It's going to cost you at 7.5 gallon. It costs that operator $18. And so he had opportunity to make $17 an acre. Remember what I said? It's the little things we're going to grab. I don't know of any magic bullet right now that you're going to say, boy, that really made us $150 extra dollars. It's going to be the 10. It's going to be the 17. It's going to be the 9. That's how you and I are going to get really good at what we do. And so let's talk about it. We got this little seed in here. Let's just draw it out, what starter does for it. So we'll have the top of the farm here. And so let's just say he's planted 1 3/4 inches. Pretty good for us here. That's where we'd be. And this little guy starts to grow up. He's going to put out some little seedling roots. And those little seedling roots run usually the direction of the trench, pretty weak. They'll pop out if you're using Delta Force. You're not putting in too much compaction. But this little guy starts to grow up, and we know on every farm. Last night they were here from South Africa and Australia. It doesn't matter where you raise corn in the world. Every corn plant's going to put a crown on 3/4 of an inch below ground. Of course, then you're going to have this little guy grow up. And then it starts to come out of this crown. You're going to start to see sets of roots, 1s and 2s. There's going to be 5 sets. I love the way God created corn. No mystery here. When they come out, there's 4 number 1s. When number 2s come out, they intersect exactly in between. So these are all 1s. These are 2s. So number 2 crown roots come out, and these are the second ones. When the third ones come out, where do you think they come out? Right over the top of 1s. It's an amazing thing. And you watch it. The neat thing is we know where they're at. What we're going to talk about tonight is how do you win in corn production if you were a corn plant? And so those are things we're going to talk about. So if you're going to put starter on, we know that these little roots are going to need some additional phosphates. It can grab that starter. And it can start to get pretty happy. And you're going to put some extended growth in. You're going to keep that corn green. And you're going to get it off to a fantastic start. And so as we think about that, we say, well, where would the starter be placed? And how would we place it? And so let's take a look at it. Now remember, this plant, little seed here, it lives off, that plant gets up to boot haul. It gets up to V5 before it ever starts to use the root system. Very little nitrogen can come into these seedling roots. It can draw on a little bit of nitrogen around. It's living off a mama seed, and the starch in that seed is keeping that plant very, very happy. And then there comes a day when the seed dries up, and crown roots 1, 2, and 3, this is your water line. This is the guy that has to get as deep as corn is tall. 12-foot high corn, number 3 roots got to be down 12 feet, and they're pulling water, and they're keeping this plant growing. So the day that this changes is the day we're very concerned about. Do you have your starters? Do you have your nitrogen in the sweet spot? And we'll talk about it. Because guess what happens? The day the seed dries up, and it hands off the baton to these 2 little guys, that's why we call them the high dollar roots. because they make some money. It's the same day the corn's deciding how many kernels around is the ear going to be. 18 rows, 16 rows, 12 rows. That's why we worry. And we don't sleep well until we get this corn crop running off at a great start. So we came out and we said, look, we realize that 1034O is a great source of phosphates. For every inch that you put on, it's going to cost you $3. That's just reality. So if we're going to 30-inch corn, and let's say we have a seed here, 6 inches apart, if we were going to put starter on all the way across, that's going to be $18 an acre. Then you're going to have some zinc, because without zinc, I wouldn't use starter. I'm not trying to be sassy or I'm just telling you, over the years, I'm old enough finally. I finally had my other birthday. I finally got old enough I can just say I know. But zinc just flat out pays. 50% of the time without zinc starter, it has a non-effect on yield. With zinc, it dramatically increases performance. So that's another $5 for zinc, 1 quart of a white label chelated. And then if you said, well, we need some Avail, that's a new product out there that's really had some excess, we're up to $28 an acre. And old Banker Potter's saying, corn's $3.25. Why are we spending $28 an acre? And you need to have a good response. And so when Tim and I and our team looked at it, we said, we need to design technology that makes this a no-brainer. So if you believe that starter only plays 50% of the time, I need to figure out a way to cut down our inputs on starter where you win every time. So we said, let's design technology that 50% of the time, use of 50% of the dollars. Let me show you what it looks like. You've seen it over here in the stand. It's called Dash. Dash has the technology ability. Every time a seed comes out of the planter, we can feed it wherever you want it. And so there's a lot of different camps, even in our own family. And so you see our Dash valve working here. This happens to be at 7-mile-an-hour planting at 5 gallon, is what you're looking at there. And it's every time a seed comes by, it says now. And so the scuttlebutt at our family is, where would we put it? So if we're going to come out and put a 3-inch bit of Dash on, would we put it here, right over the top of the seed? Dash has the technology, if you were a Huck Step shoe, let me just show it to you. No need of talking about it if I got a video of it running here. Watch the seed come out. As it slows down here, you'll see it. So you're seeing it shoot. There's a seed. It shot a stream of starter. There's a seed. You see the seed bounce on the ground. We're not in the trench, and you can see, but it's got the ability. So we're going to call this System A. We would let you come out and put just 3 inches right on the sweet spot. So now we have these little seedling roots that are very, very happy. We're managing our salts because we're only half of the actual salt that's in the ground. You could come out and put it with this Huck Step shoe like we just did. We'll call that B. Or maybe you're someone that says, you know what, I want my starter really close to the seed, but I don't want it touching the seed. I want to put my 3 inches right here. We'll call that C. So I don't know whether you're A, B, or C. We're going to find out. In several short years, we'll know exactly. And since we're not shy, we'll tell you what we think. And we'll say, you know what, it needs to be here. But when you start to treat just the area that counts, all of a sudden, we took the $28 to $14 an acre. And we cut your inputs in half. And we raised yields by as much as 15 bushel. And so, as we talk about Dash, it'll have the ability to go right into the Precision 2020 system. We're going to plug Dash in right on your SRM, on your row unit, and your 2020 monitor. You can see here, in this case, it's showing that there's putting out 7.5 gallon to the acre. And so as you turn corners, though, if you have turn compensation on your meters, we're only going to treat the seed. So if you've got a big planter and you're going around a corner, it doesn't matter what the speed of row 1 is compared to 24, because we don't fire until seed comes out of the seed tube. We're sensing outside the seed tube, seed comes by, we say, aha, we know where you're at. We lay down. You can change the width of this, you can change the height of it. Tell me how many gallon you want, and we can tell you how much liquid we have to fire each time on that valve. At the end of the day, though, I really like the future. Instead of being $17, all of a sudden we're $26. And these are the things that are going to make you and I really good corn growers. As we started to work with this, and all of a sudden, companies are coming out of the woodwork and they're saying, Greg, we're large companies. We have technology that's so expensive, we can't afford to put it on the whole length of the furrow. But if you have Dash, and we can come in and put our magic right here, even though it's expensive, we're just going to put it right there. All of a sudden, we've opened up a ton of opportunity. There were some biological companies here last night, and they're saying, this is where the future is going to go. So this year, we're looking for a few good farmers. They're going to work with Justin and his team. So if you have an interest in this, don't be shy afterwards. Just stop up here at the stand. We'll get your phone number. We're going to get some prototype planters running. I don't know, we'll have 10 or 15 planters running, including my own. And we'll lay out the protocol, and we're going to test this. I'm excited about the things we're going to do. Starter pays. And it really starts to make sense when we cut the cost in half. You know, there's times, ag retailer, they're tremendous people. I have a great relationship with Mark Baer and the Sun Ag team just down the road here. They are just tops. And as we worked with them over the years, I saw that as our farm grew into more diversification and just what our needs were, we said we need to own our own sprayer. For years, we had everything custom sprayed. But having the ability to come in and do it ourselves opened up a lot of opportunity. What's some of the math? This is my math for our farm. Because we spray multiple passes of seed, this sprayer ended up at 560 hours. Excuse me. 17,000 acres that sprayer covered. You've got to realize some of the seed fields we go over it 8 times. And so there's all kinds of opportunity. Of course, we do wide drop, we do fungicide spraying. So it averages about $8 an acre between the chemical at 6 and then the wide drop and fungicide. It ended up being 8 across the board, $50,000 for the sprayer payment per year, labor of $11,200, fuel of $4,200 this year. For us, we made the banker really happy. We put $70,000 in our pocket. Plus we had the opportunity and an asset here that really started to change the way we think about our farm. For example, if you have an asset where you're going to start to spray your own nitrogen, why wouldn't you put your own nitrogen tank farm up? And you can buy nitrogen October 1st and September 25th for $60 a ton savings. For my farm, for our rate of nitrogen at 180 units, that's $17 an acre. You put that over in the asset file. That's another positive. When it comes to plant diseases, we well understand the value of keeping gray leaf out of corn. So we're in the cornfield, we're looking. We start looking low, and what are we always watching? We're trying to protect the ear leaf. The ear leaf is your golden ticket. So we got this corn plant here, and we got this ear here, right off this ear leaf. And this ear leaf right here is the one we're really watching. So you see gray leaf coming off the ground. It starts to work its way up these bottom leaves. And then it's going to get here about on the 8th leaf up. And we look in here and we're looking for lesions. And so this leaf here is 2 below the ear leaf. We're going to start ready to spray. We're not going to let it take out the ear leaf because of the value that we can get. When you own your own sprayer, it starts to open up a lot of opportunity and you can start to cut costs. I'm sorry, that jumped ahead too. Let me stop it here. It's having a lot of problems. Tim, I'm going to need you to come up and help me out. So, Tim here? Somebody come up and put my PowerPoint back, and you'll have to do it over on the side. My little pointer here, I don't know, the batteries were just changed. It decided to go crazy. See if you can put me back on 49 here, the airplane. Just take me back 1 and go down into, or you click it here. I can just put me back in the, there you go. Let me see if we can stop that. There we go. So we talk about gray leaf. This young man actually farms with us. The pilot, he helps on our harvest team. He's a neighbor kid. Fantastic pilot. We put the GoPros on this plane, and you can see it running across the top. And so this is 20-inch corn planted at 39,000, and we're in here doing side-by-side tests. And we're bringing the Hagee in. And so this is 20-inch corn here. And you can see we're looking down from the boom. There's a camera mounted up in the boom. And we got one nozzle running on the boom, and there's 3 here on the undercover that are spraying from the bottom up. So we're putting on fungicide. This happens to be Headline Amp at 10 ounces, and we're spraying here 17 gallon in the acre. The plane was putting on 3 gallon to the acre. He's running at 170 mile an hour. We're running here probably about 10 to 11. And we're spraying and we're soaking this plant. And we're saying, can we get coverage? Because most of the leaf openings are on the bottom side of that plant. And we're saying, and there's some from the plane over the top, from the sprayer over the top. I don't deny that you'll see a few, but this is what we're looking for. Super coverage so we can take it and we can increase yield. This is Winfield's data. They had all these different locations, and they're saying when they used undercover over the top, they had a 3.5 bushel response. And I like those numbers. Those are things that add up. And it's all due to coverage. It's not any magic in the undercover. It's the fact that we're able to come from underneath. Soybeans, no different. We've done lots of research in soybeans. Some high-yielding beans here. The check was 81.3. There wasn't a lot of disease in it. I didn't know what we'd find. We put $21 in the product. And so just a top boom spray over the top, we lost $8. But when we put 360 undercover and one nozzle on the boom over the top, we ended up with a $10. After we paid for the sprayer pass and the chemical, we ended up with a $10.67 in our pocket. So these are things that we talk about. These are things that you and I, we put our hands on the lever and we say, what are the things we can control? Other states, I know we got a lot of states here. This is Texas. Undercover has become a known commodity down there from the fact this is sorghum. Sorghum is a major, major crop for Texas. Sorghum board come to us and they said, can you help us? Sugarcane aphid is a pest that sucks into the bottom of the leaf and you can't get spray to kill him. They were spraying every day over the top with these wheel sprayers. They came in with undercover and one spray, but coming underneath, we took them out. Same thing in the South and cotton this year of whiteflies. So the technology to come and spray from the bottom up has made quite an impact difference. It's been a lot of fun working with these other crops because you can learn a lot from these growers. They're good growers, and they've just been under a lot of stress. Let's take a look, though, and talk about nitrogen. Nitrogen is a huge input. On our spreadsheet, it makes a huge difference how you and I manage. And over the last 5 years, we've made some pretty radical changes. So let's talk about what is the plant like? What does the plant itself like? I don't know where that drawing is. Let's see. Let's just draw off here. Let's put another set of crown roots over here on this side. Put the number 3 out here again. And so if you and I were going to come in and think like a corn plant, and we can see the root structure here. This is a plant here at V7. And you can see the roots, and you say, well, where would you like to be fed? And how would you like to be fed? So we talked about how this corn seed itself is going to give up and the crown roots are going to take over. So if I'm going to come in on the whiteboard and say the perfect position for nitrogen, in my opinion, is with a corn planter. Because you know exactly where each row is. We know exactly where each seed is. And so if I'm going to come in and put nitrogen in, there's a lot of them out there that are doing a 2x2. 2 inches down and 2 inches over. And we took a look at this. We said, well, here's our high dollar roots. So why wouldn't we come in? Let's start over. That looks a little messy. We'll get it drawn here pretty quick. This little guy happy. Got our crown. We got our 1s and 2s. We got our planting depth here. Got a little seedling roots. Mesocotyle. So we know this guy's 3/4. So where would we position it for the best success? As we thought about it and talked about it, we said, we understand that disc openers going in the ground at 2 inches deep take quite a bit of downforce. For years at Precision, we studied disc openers, and we knew the kind of force it took to put a seeding disc opener in. And I challenged our team, and I said, why wouldn't we go over 3 inches both ways? I love the fact that you can be in. We're going to talk about best in class. We're going to talk about designing something that's best in class. And why wouldn't we come in and just go 3/4 of an inch deep 3 inches over and start to work with nature. Instead of coming down here and putting it down, in this, well, actually it's this area right here. It'd be just 2 inches over from the seed and it's below the seed. And so we're going to put 32% on. We're going to come in with the planter and put it on. And we're going to put it up here at the 3/4 inch depth. And then we're going to let it start to rain. And as rain starts to happen, it starts to dilute. And dilution starts to take place. And nitrogen moves quickly with moisture. And all of a sudden, we start to create a water balloon on this band. We know that banded nitrogen is what? It's 2x what a broadcast rate would be. If you broadcast 120 pounds of 28%, 60 pounds equals this in a band. The minute you and I start to band our inputs and our nitrogen, we slow down Mike and his team from utilizing it. If you go out and broadcast, the microbials are going to break all that nitrogen down, and they're going to take it before the corn plant gets it. The carbon penalty always satisfies itself. That's why you and I see knee-high corn that turns yellow almost over one weekend when warm weather hits. What happens when warm weather hits? Mike's population quadruples. And the microbials just feed on all the N that's available on the corn plant saying, I need a drink. And so we're going to come in and put this 32% here, and we're going to create dilution, and it's going to dilute it down, and we're going to create nitrogen moving down, and all of a sudden our 1s and 2s are in the middle of this feeding zone, and they just go crazy. And if you look at them under a microscope, when you put a crown root 1 and 2, new root into a nitrogen, it just blows up hair roots like you can't believe. It looks like the hair on a dog's back. And so they're starting to feed there very, very happy. And that starts to do some pretty amazing things for us. Because if we're in this 3-inch zone, we are doing what we call safe. So we know that the planter becomes the operation of choice. You're going to be across in every row of this field anyway at this planter. Why not install some tanks and put the nitrogen on and start to look at it? So 360 has a product called Bandit. And we're in here, and we showed it to you at Farm Progress Show, and it was on the back of the closing wheels here. And so you can see that it's no longer there. And so there's just an evolution of design. And we were in the field every day with Bandit. Our engineering team did a fantastic job. There's 3 things I want to point out. Do no harm. At Precision I had it, and at 360 I have it. I tell our engineers, whatever we do, we can do no harm. Whether that's a bean plant, a corn plant, a sorghum plant. And so the safety of this position. So we've come up, and we're off the row unit itself. We've added 5 inches in here to the overall row unit. We have an 8-inch disc that's towed in on purpose. Because when it's towed in, we don't collapse the trench and put dry dirt on top of the seed. We leave that open trench all the way back here to where the closing wheels are going to close it. We're not going to harm the depth, seeding depth. If one of the things that have been out on the Yetter go-between, I've run them for years. We've had them on for 7 years. There's times when we get very nervous. When we hit hard ground, we worry about seeding depth coming up. Even though you got Delta Force, there's always a seed or two that could be shallower. So they're spring-loaded. They're going to have, just like a seed firmer would be, there's a poly tube guide that's going to keep this down in this track, and closing is virgin, and we're going to provide a chain with you. So it's all about nitrogen placement. Where do you want to be in the sweet spot? And how can we run it so there's absolutely no harm, and it's an easy, simple system for you? And then the value starts to come in. Can we price it to where everybody affords it? Because my dream is this. I would say there's probably 20% of the growers in the nation that have nitrogen on their tractors and planters. We need to take that number to 70%. And the only way we're going to get you to do it, we're going to have to prove the value, and we're going to have to make it affordable. And so we priced it so everybody can afford it. And we're saying, what if? So here's our program. We're going to come in, and with the planter, we're going to put down that first drink of nitrogen. Get this right here. So we're going to have the planter come in, and we're going to be 3 inches over the side times 2, and we're going to be about 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch deep, and we're going to call that the sweet spot. And we're going to have about 23 to 24 gallon of 32%, and then we're going to have some sulfur in there. Remember, we always do a 10-to-1 ratio, okay? So if we're going to use 23 gallon of 32%, we're going to have 2.3 gallon of sulfur in that mix. We're going to make sure, due to all the earth muffin and tree huggers, we've cleaned up all the smokestacks in the nation, and now we got yellow striped corn. I can see your field from the pickup truck driving down the road. I can see the yellow striping. And so we're going to come in, and this is going to be about 85 units of nitrogen. Guess what? In that sweet spot, that 2x potential, that's going to take us all the way out to V10, V12 corn. And corn's going to be happy. I'm talking happy corn. And so we're going to have corn about this high before we ever have to start worrying about the next pass of nitrogen. And it starts to give us and let us buy time. So we're going to have Bandit on the planter, and it's going to be able to come in. You can see here that the poly hose guide as it's coming down. You're going to see that we're going to have it about 2 3/4 to 3 inches on each side. The seed's down here at 1 3/4 inches. The band's going to be about 3/4 under the ground. It's going to have the ability, if it hits an obstruction, it's not going to take your seeding depth up. So as it comes up and over a rock, they're spring loaded. They're going to give. So if you have rock, if you're from the north here, you probably say you have stone. I learned that the hard way a long time ago when I talked to you boys from the north. And when you talked about rock, when you said you had rock, I didn't get too nervous. When you said you had stone, I was very nervous because you're talking rock. I mean, basketballs and, volleyballs and such. And so those are things that are out there. So we said, okay, is there value to a Bandit corn? And we've been doing it for years and years. So at the proving grounds, we said, let's run these tests and let's find out. So being, the guy that always says, let's really make a good test, I said, we're only going to put on 30 pounds of nitrogen with the planter. Let's cut it way back. I've had some bad experiences here at the proving grounds of getting corn to turn yellow. This farm just seems to have a knack that doesn't like nitrogen. It just doesn't need it. And I said, we're 30 pounds of N. We'll turn corn yellow. When it gets about this high, we'll come in at wide drop and make a great video. We'll flash it green in 48 hours. Oh, it's going to be sweet. And so we went out, and we set the plot up. So this is dry land. The irrigator never run across this. Pay attention to this brown strip here. I'll talk about that after a bit. On this half, we replicated 2015 rainfall. And so that's a lot of rain. On July 2nd, we had 9 inches. So on July 2nd in here, we had 9 inches of water. We duplicated it every day, exactly what the weather was in 2015. We said, let's see what nitrogen does with lots of water. And then the year that we had, extremely dry and hot. We said, this is going to give us a good test. So we went in and put the 30 pounds on. And it never turned yellow. I watched it, and I kept saying, I can't see the difference where we only have 30 pounds compared to, at the end, 200. I said, something's wrong. And we kept walking in it, and it ended up yielding 223 bushel on 30 pounds of N. So I am the card-holding member of the 0.7 pounds of nitrogen per bushel. I am the guy that won at 1.13 pounds. I'd like to see you better that one. Isn't that amazing? And so you say, well, why is that? Well, you'd like to say it's because of the Bandit, and it is. Bandit is powerful. But we do something called ISNT. And so Dr. Mulvaney, he's an environmentalist science at University of Illinois, about 15 years ago, probably almost 20 now, designed this test called ISNT. That stands for Illinois State Nitrogen Test. That's really kind of a fancy name, isn't it? But what they do is they come out and you pull samples and you send them in and they tell you exactly what nitrogen's in the bank, in your bank account. It's organic N. It's what the manure would be from a livestock farm, a chicken farm, a dairy, a hog farm. And it shows you the good levels of nitrogen and bad levels of nitrogen. A 250 or lower organic N is going to need a lot of N to make an ear of corn. Well, where our strip was is right here where the dotted line is. Right here is this irrigator path, and you can see the strip, and guess what? We had 400 pounds, parts per million of organic N. Did it need any more? In all reality, probably not. Did the 30 pounds really raise 223 bushel? Absolutely. I know farms in northern Illinois on big feedlot farms Walter Brothers, you may have heard of them. They win the Illinois corn growers a lot. The most nitrogen they ever put on is 70 pounds, and they're raising almost 300 bushel year after year. Why? Because they have organic levels of 550. This is a test you need to know if you're going to buy the neighbor's farm and you're kind of just curious, or if you're going to cash rent a neighbor's farm. If you knew this number, I can tell you whether to pay 300 an acre or 200 an acre, because it makes all the difference in the world. So for a nitrogen test like we put out, it probably wasn't the best place to put it. It'd have been much better effective. We'd have got yellow corn up here with that. So that's just something. But all of our farms, we test, and we know exactly where they're at. I would not put nitrogen on this soil type right here. That's over 500. You would take this nitrogen and put it over here and cut your overall inputs. So as we go with the planter, it's going to require tanks. As we talk about tanks, you go on the marketplace and you say, well, what's out there? And these are some pretty good sized tanks. They're probably about, I'd say they're almost 400, almost 500 gallon on a side. But look how far out they are. This will get your heart pumping if you're driving in the roads in central Illinois. Maybe if you're here from Nebraska and you got all gravel roads and you never see a car, maybe it'd be all right. This is 17 feet, 5 inches wide. And I challenged our team and I said, if we're going to have farmers jump in to putting nitrogen out of the planter, we need to provide a simple, easy way of 700 gallon on the tractor that stays in the shadow of the duals, no wider than the tractor itself, and it's positioned back and up over the center so the weight stays on the rear axle. And we don't take it all out front where we start to take a lot of weight off the rear axle of the tractor itself. So I'm planning here for the video. We got good sight line through it. I'd welcome all of you to sit in the tractor. Just take a look through. There's about 6 to 8 inches between the hood and the tractor. So there's 700 gallon there that gives you some capability. But at the same time, you and I are going to stop, and we realize that. And so a lot of you have gone out and you've invested in 10-mile-an-hour planters. That happens to be a Deere system, or you have a second planter. And so when you and I are sitting here, the heart rate starts to go up. You can see here we're loading both starter and nitrogen, and we do that quite a few times a day. And that planter is required to get a lot of acres per day. And as if you look at it, well, it's very common for us to do 10 pit stops a day. The best we are is 12 minutes. And that's a 3-inch pump on that semi, and that means Fred's got to be there with the hose. That's always kind of an amazing thing. I've often wondered when I'm coming up to the truck, I wonder if he's ready. Because my vision is the valve will be open, the motor will be idling, and he will be holding the hose. That's the vision. It's a great vision. And I'm thinking, he sees me coming. He's getting ready. And there's nobody around, and he's in the truck. Great guy. He's in the truck listening to the radio, and then they come back and they say, we got to get the valve open. And I'm hooking up the hose, and the motor doesn't always start first pull, and you get stressed, and you're thinking, 120 minutes, this planter easily does 45 acres an hour. So that's 90 acres a day, and I'm thinking we need to be planting soybeans and corn the same day. And so the challenge is what can we do different? And we understand how we take grain away from a combine. I said, what if? Let's get crazy for a bit. What if we designed, in our dairy, we have gators everywhere. And so we got gators. So what if we put a 300-gallon tank on a gator, put on a boom with magnets, and we come and couple, no different than the Air Force does, and we put spacers in the wheel, so we're running right in the wheel, and the next time the planter comes back, it'll run in the same wheel. So we're not going to add any compaction because we got 2 rows in between. And so all of a sudden now, when this planter pulls in the field, he's only got 75 gallon in his tanks. Who cares? Start planting. Because I'm going to fill that gator instantly. I can put 300 gallon in less than 3 minutes. And I'll chase him and give him the first 300 gallon. Now I'm going to go back to the guy sitting by the road and fill my gator, and I'm going to sit and listen to the radio for 15 minutes. And then I'm going to reload him again and again, and we're not going to stop. And if he needs starter, that semi has the ability to take both. What about weight in the center? This picture is real. And painfully, this is in my farm. It was a spring that was pretty wet. This is a 1790 central fill planter. The 1790 Deere planters had a pinch row. They have a tire track on each side. These are pinch rows. So you're looking here at 20-inch corn, and you're seeing some real yield loss. This measured out 67 bushel less than the wings of what we call the guest rows. And you laugh and you say, well, that's extreme. I don't think central fill planters do that. And you look back, and we look here at 2015. And this is a central fill planter. This is over 20 bushel. There's some good corn in this field. And you can see this is the center of the planter. Wing, wing, center, wing, wing, center, wing, wing, center, wing, wing, center, and it goes across the field. And if you're the guy cutting always the center of the planter, you're having a really bad day. If you're the combine that's cutting the wing, there's a big difference here. That's almost, what, 60 bushel difference? So it's pretty common you see 8 to 10 bushel. I would say every year 8 to 10 bushel in the center. And a lot of years I've seen as high as 15 due to compaction. So tracks on the center of these planters can make a difference. Keeping them lightweight. I have a buddy in Iowa. He says, I got the answer. I'm going to do nitrogen for the first time. Pretty good sized farmer. He says, I bought me a quad track row track. He said, I'm putting 2,500 gallon of nitrogen on the tractor. 2,500 gallon. I said, whoa. I saw him later on this summer. I said, how'd that go? Boy, that thing was heavy, he said. I see the tracks. I'm thinking, surprise. But I mean, you can take the whole company with you at one trip, but think it through. At the end of the day, we got to raise more bushels. And so for years, we've done split end. We are not a once and done. If you're a once and done, this crowd, you should probably be a little nervous. I'm not going to shine a flashlight at you or anything, but I'm just saying, I don't understand. How would you know in October or November how much nitrogen you need to finish the race to next harvest? See, I know what you did this year because I talked to some. They said, Greg, nitrogen got cheap. We put on enough. And then they get this smile. And you realize they're over 280 on because they're smiling like we got ourselves covered. If they have a summer like 15, ouch. And I'm not saying that we're going to get regulated by the government, but we are going to get regulated by the government. We got to be good stewards. And so for years, we've side dressed. And we'd come out, we would side dress, and then we started to take a look at that, and we said, we understood that when we side dress in the center of that corn row, we would score the ground. And so when I did the drip tape for the first time, another one of the reasons was, so you got your corn here, your corn row here, and then we would come in and we would side dress right down the center, either a 30 or 20-inch row, whatever you want to say, and that ground would crack open. Absolutely unbelievable in 2012. And then it would crack the opposite way, like a cookie cutter. So I ended up with 20-inch blocks of soil where we snapped every crown root. Our corn was grown in a 20 by 20 dry block of ground. It was 105 degrees in 2012. And I had Ferry out there. I said, Ferry, how many bushel did this cost us? He said, when your ground cracks the extent that you're seeing it here, down where that side dress bar, he said, you lost 50 plus bushels when you crack all those number 3 crown roots. And I said, well, we're going to fix that, and that's when we did drip. Because I knew drip tape in here would not let this crack open if you kept the water to it. Every 40 inches of a drip line, you'll keep it from cracking. But then we started to think about, we said, well, every time we go in the cornfield, we see what we call stem water. This is just a heavy fog. Look at the water that ran down. Excuse me. Been fighting a respiratory thing. Look at the water that ran down this corn plant. And you see here, this is 1/10 of an inch of rain. And we have mud around that corn plant itself. So we went out to Prairie Grounds and we said, what if we would put on a 1/2 inch of water with the irrigator, and we would go to Menards and buy some really cheap little poly devices so we capture everything that runs down the stalk compared to that tub in the center of a 30-inch row. And so we put on a 1/2 inch of water here. You can see it. Guess what? What do you think it is? 8 times. 8 times more water in the root system that's in the center of the row. Our Creator knows what is happening. And so you think about that. So if you get 1/10 of an inch of rain overnight, your root system sees 8/10 of an inch of rain. If you got an inch overnight, you got more than mud around that root system. You got a good drink. And so when you and I are coming in the center of the row, and you can see it here, we're a long ways away for nitrogen to get to where that's going to be. And so we've been studying this over the years, and we said, what if we come in with Y-drop, and we put, remember that root system I showed you? And we put nitrogen right beside the stalk. Yes, on top of the ground. But we put nitrogen right there next to the stalk. What kind of response would we get? And the bushels are a little hard to believe almost. And year after year, we're seeing almost 6 bushel, and we're saying, where's that come from? There's no magic in those black hoses. So remember Dr. Mulvaney, the guy that did the ISNT test? He gave us some nuclear N. It's called N15. And we went out and we did corn that was this tall for colder, 30-inch rows. It was right up to our waist. And we put the nuclear N in the middle of that 15-inch row, and then we did Y drop right beside it. 2 comparative, actually replicated 3 times across this field. And we found that when they got corn up to 31% moisture, in other words, black layer, we cut it off and sent it to the university, and he's got grad students there that grind all this corn up, and they can measure nuclear N, exactly how much is in there. And guess what they found? 25% more uptake of nitrogen where Y drop was used compared to the colder. It's just simply science. How much nitrogen can we get in to create the ears? And you can see the ears here earlier in the season, and you can see the length of the ears, and it was 6.6 bushel. And you watch side dress bars that now have Y drop on them, and there's a big difference in how they run compared to a colder. And so if you're sitting here and you say, you know what, I got a side dress bar, I want to put N on earlier than Y drop, but I would like to take advantage of no colders, this is something you need to take a look at, because at the end of the day, with all the Beck studies and all the Winfield studies and all of our own studies that our 360 dealers did, we're sitting at 6 bushel in 3 years. Nothing different, same amount of N. Only thing different is we put it next to the stalk compared to 2 to 3 inches in the ground in the center. And this gets my motor running, because these are the things that make you and I different. And these are the things that why when we say Illinois is going to raise 200 bushel an acre and you raise 250, that 50 extra bushel comes because you're out there doing it. Now, we know that many co-ops do urea buggies. And I told our team, I said, we need to study this. This is a brand new buggy, all the technology, they control it all from the cab. So he's in here throwing a 60-foot pattern, and he's out here doing it. And you can see here where the pellets of urea are down in the whirl. Remember when I told you that, remember that dry strip that went through the center of that field? Well, it didn't take long, and you can see the leaves, and you could pick it up. And you could see it on the leaves, and you could watch it on the ground for quite some time, those urea pellets laid on the ground all across the center of that 30-inch row. We took it to yield, and we compared it to a Y drop. Pretty serious bushels here. And you can see it in the corn itself, and you can pick up the difference. Look at the kernels that we blew off here. Still good corn. By no means bad corn. 243, I'm in. But I sure like the 258. And so those are things that we look at. So when we talk about Y drop, I put up 4 growing seasons here. And you can see that they're different. You can see 2015. Remember I told you this is what we replicated? Here is right here. When we got into this stretch, we had all this water. The interesting thing is, look at 2012, the yellow line, and 2017, the black line. If we wouldn't have had an amazing amount of rain early, those years were so similar, you can't believe it. It makes your heart pound when you realize how close we could have come to some really bad days. Temperatures were definitely lower this year and a much higher humidity, but at the end of the day, there was very little difference between 12 and 17 through the growing season. If anything, 12 had more rain than the growing season. We had this early spike. This should make your heart pound when you realize all your nitrogen's on early. You see these kind of rains that we had in April here, and we realize there's a cost. So what is the ideal system? We talk about what would a corn plant like? And so you see a young man here that's been out, and he's got his planter put on some called Base Plus, so he had on 80 units. Now he's coming back into head-high corn. You can see some tassels are out here. And he's coming in with Y drop, and it's all about timing and placement. So he's going to do a 2-pass nitrogen. But what did he learn? How much time has gone by here? A lot. Well over 60 days have gone by, and he's really smart because he's given himself the knowledge to know what happened. He doesn't have to look in the rearview mirror. He knows exactly what's happened since planting time. He knows exactly how much he's going to put on, and he got done. He had 180 units on for the whole year. Now, for years, in the Ferry days, when we were doing some pre-plant, some a little bit of the planter, some of side dress, we were always in the 240 to 250, and I think there's other guys in here, my buddies, they're the same way. 5 years ago, very common for us to put on 240. If we hit 1.0 pounds of N per bushel, we were like, oh yeah. University tell you it takes 1.2. But look at the difference. In the last 3 years, we're only putting on 180 pounds of N. We're in a 0.75 average, and our yields have gone up dramatically every year. And you start to talk about that, and you say, well, this is what the goal is. If you and I are going to go after inputs, and we're going to manage, but yet still raise yields, for every 1,000 acres for our farm, it's $58,000 in our pocket. That's what's helping us trade combines and buy track tractors and do the things that we believe are necessary in our operation. And it comes down to understanding how do we manage N. We took last year 9 farmers in 5 states. We took their whole farm data, our agronomy team did, and they analyzed it, and they found across those 9 farms in 5 states, they used 26 less pounds of N with wide drop, and they raised their yields by 8.3 an acre. And so those are things we talk about that make a difference. I put up 3 growers here. Dave Hula, in fact, his neighbor's here tonight. Dave is just a fantastic guy. Just love the guy. Last year at the machinery show down in Louisville, Kentucky, he was talking to me, and he was pretty blue. You know, he was saying, man, I was so disgusted. He said, I was out picking in a non-contest field. So this year, he won the nation at 500. Let me write it down, because I have had a lot of farmers over the years that say, corn can't be 500 bushel an acre. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it can. 542.2 bushel to the acre. And you and I are sitting in here at 260, and we're like, oh, yeah. And then we look at him, and then all of a sudden we're sad because we're saying we're only halfway. But it's reality, and it happened. But he was telling me about this. He said, I was harvesting. He said, Greg, the yield monitor was over 600 bushel. He said, I saw 640. And I was like, oh, I got the wrong field in the contest. And he said it was a long ways it stayed over 600. You love to hate that guy. And you think about all of his trucking problems. I mean, you can't keep enough trucks in a head of 600 bushel. I hope he waits forever on the end. And he's telling me that, and he said, doggone it. He said, if I got in a contest and only went 502. I said, yeah, you got a lot of problems, Dave. It stinks to be you. But so he says he's been using wide drop. He said there's easy 12 bushel. Mark Roskamp here from Manitou says, he had over a field and went over 300 bushel. He said, due to the wide drop, he said, 100% of our acres if we can. And I love this young man. Todd Kimbrough from Texas. Won the National Corn Growers in Dryland in Texas with 272 this year. In Texas, dryland. So, quite the family. He's basically saying here, I've seen as much as 61 bushel increase by managing N. And so it's things that we talk about. But if you and I are going to go out and we're going to have wide drop on a sprayer, we say, man, that's a little scary. We're out in here in some pretty tall corn. How do we steer? And so 360 Glide is out here. We got the guide system, and then we got what we call the glide. So guide is all about, we intercept the John Deere single coming up to the globe with the feelers. We know where the tire is. And we say, you know what, your AB line isn't quite right. We need to bump ourselves over to the left or the right 3 inches. And we intercept that single, and we change it due to the wands running here in the growing corn. So we got some good demonstrations over here. Take a look. The glide system is nothing more than keeping the boom and tall corn at the right spot. So if we run it here, you can see it. In this case, the guide is here right in front of the tire. They're now moved to the center of the machine in one row. And we're in a seed field here, and it's kind of a rough field. And so you can see he's keeping that sprayer right in the sweet spot. You don't run over seed corn. Man, those ears are worth a lot. Look at the boom itself moving. You can see that it's going up and down. See, it's going up and down. It's keeping that wide drop exactly 12 to 14 inches off the ground. And so as he's going through there, it's just keeping himself in the spot. So that's new technology that we have this year. The fall products ran extremely well. We had Yield Saver. These are the simple little brushes that are in your corn head. We have corn chain roll here that helps digest residue and release more nutrients. And then in the back of the room here, we have 3 new ripper styles of the Bullet. We got the one chrome that's for a lot of high wear. We got our standard fabricated for wear and heavy. And then we got the super heavy duty. This is a brazed unit that's built to take rocks. And so those are things that are out there. If you walk out the door into the big room and the meeting room there, you're going to see that this year we're going to introduce chain roll for case and gearing off North Star heads. So those are things that are there. But at the end of the day tonight here, when you leave, here's what I want you to think about. There's nothing sacred in your operation. If I was sitting at your kitchen table, I would love it if we could take the time just to sit together. I would love to hear about your operation. What are the things that you and I, when our wives ask us questions sometimes, there's some things I don't like to talk about. Like, do you really need 2 sprayers or whatever the question is? And we don't have to talk about that. Let's talk about something else. Whatever it is in your operation, you need to take a flashlight and shine it on it. And remember the goal is, it's just line upon line. We're taking the 865 and we're adding $15.25 to that, and maybe there's a 2025. But when we add it all up, the dollars that you and I are going to have to put our kids in college and trade pickups and maybe rent the next farm next to us, this is what we're talking about. I want you to know there's tremendous opportunity. Maybe you need to diverse a little bit. Maybe you need to be like Greg and go away from corn on corn and a lot of corn, and maybe you need to look at some different soybeans, or maybe it's wheat, or whatever the crop is. I don't know. For you, you know. This I know. I want you to have a fantastic spring in 2018 and a fantastic growing season through the whole summer. John, you got any quick questions? And we can let them stand up and stretch a little bit, or what would you like to do?
Yep, just stand up. You went a little longer today. You just got the full load out there.
I don't even know what time it is. There's no clocks.
Hey, Andy, could you flip the light switch on that post over there? So, yeah, we've got some questions that have come in on the text line. If anybody raises their hand, has a question, we'll be sure to take that. The bakers, I know you guys got to leave at 7 and got here a little late, so if our white shirt guys could make sure we get any questions they have on Bandit and steering.
Did the baker bus get any dessert? They need to eat the dessert.
They're going to dinner. They said they don't want anything, but I think they've snuck a little.
You can eat some. Take it along and eat it in your room tonight. Grab some extra. Yeah, I see you back there.
Good. Yes. Any questions to start off with? Who's brave? Who's first? That's what I thought. So somebody wanted to know, does anybody around here know what no-till is? It looks like everything's pretty black.
Well, you know what? We're 50% no-till. On the soybeans, you saw us there running. We're in no-till. Corn, we're full till. We're on vertical tillage. And there's a reason. And I would bet you to say that your address is probably south of Route 70. You know, for the guys in Minnesota here, when you start talking no-till, they say, man, we can't get rid of corn. I got friends in Minnesota that bullboard plow. In the dairy world, I got a really good friend. He runs 2 10-bottom plows in Deere, and they turn everything black. So we manage residue very, very tightly. Of course, we're looking at, for our dairy, we look at cover crops. We had about 1,000 acres of cover crops out on all different seeds and where we chop silage. And so we're always looking at that type of thing. The dairy's looking at, would we put out rye? Would we chop for heifer feed? Would we chop that rye off and then come back into soybeans? And so, yeah, we're well aware of no-till. We're well aware of cover crops. We also understand that when we come in and do corn on corn especially, we're going to do full tillage. Corn on corn, the problem you talk about second-year corn a lot. And so this corn plant grew this year, and this root system's out here. And you got fossil tracks down. So in no-till, if you come and put a new seed down here this next year, and that little crown root starts to grow, it takes the least path of resistance, and it grows down the old fossil track of last year's root. This right here you call pathological effect, and it's called a negative. I've seen as much as 15 to 20 bushel loss due to second-year corn on corn due to the fact. So we come in with a bullet. We rip this up, we confuse the roots, and when the new root grows, it just has to make its own track down. And so we talk a lot about the value of those type of things. Great question, though.
There's another one. This is like the no-till conference. Maybe
Okay.
Frank Lessiter's here.
Well, could
How
be.
does Bandit perform in no-till? Maybe talk about what we see down
So
in,
we got a torsion spring on Bandit. We got a toe and a camber on it. So it's easy for it to slice in. We're looking for it to go, even in the hardest of soils. So like in Texas where we put triticale on, and we'll come in and chop that triticale off. We'll come in no-till corn right into it, 106-day corn. We do 2 crops down there. Tough environment. And so we're designing the torsion spring to be that it's going to go in that environment. Will it go in an inch? Probably not. As long as it goes in over 1/4 of an inch and we have the chain on the back and we cover that nitrogen, I'm good to go. So it's not going to be ever over 1.25 inches deep because you just lose spring tension the way it's designed. And so in Grandma's garden, we don't want that nitrogen to go too deep. At the same time, we want to be able to come into some pretty tough environments. So we're pretty excited about the capability of it.
yeah, we saw some pretty tough environments down in Argentina running that no-till conditions down
Yeah,
there.
we were in Argentina and Australia with it. So we've got a pretty good feel for where we're at.
Yep, Bandit, does it require some kind of rain to get the nitrogen down into the root zone?
Some kind of a
Rain.
rain. Yeah, if we're going to be putting nitrogen on, if you're telling me it's never going to rain, we probably got worse problems than where our nitrogen is. But we're going to be down here, that 3/4 of an inch. It doesn't take much rain to start to dissolve nitrogen and make it move through the profile very, very quickly. So, Tim, do you have a question?
Yeah, you did anything with wide drops and beans? We're starting to see 100 bushel bean yields. We're talking about a lot of nitrogen. Actually, side dressing beans is not going to work because we still get out to it. Have you had any experience with wide drops and beans?
We have tried nitrogen of wide drop on beans. We've come in and put some 100-pound and 200-pound rates on to see, there was some research from Stoller Biologicals down in Texas where they put as much as 600 pounds in on beans and they saw some ridiculous yields. I don't know if I could verify it. They said 300 bushel beans. I've never heard of that. That's a lot of pods. So the taproot on soybeans creates a little bit different environment. Obviously you got some things off that taproot, but that just goes down. The problem we've had with soybeans and with wide drop and different nutrients, now I had a gentleman in the front row last night that's using biologicals, and he said for $30 of his biologicals, and he didn't tell me what type, he's seen a 10 bushel response on soybeans. The 10 bushel response is real. That's $100 an acre. At $30, I can pocket the 70. My problem has been as we use wide drop and soybeans, I can't get it to repeat. And so I get nervous about in a meeting like this, we start talking about, hey, we got a 6 bushel response, but it only happened in one field one time, and the next time I did it, it didn't do any. Then I get really, I wish I could get some repeatability, and that's tough. I'll tell you that the thing we got the most out of soybeans is early planting. April, sometime, is where the safest thing I've ever seen. It's 10 to 12 bushel year in and year out. And so if I was going to try to take my soybean yields up, I'd probably go to Brad Cross and buy a used planter. And they said, well, we got to have a second planter. Brad, you have a few left that you can sell 1 or 2 more. So that's something I would look at. But great comment. Thank you, Tim.
Other questions out here? Somebody wants to know how soon they can start filling their bulk seed hoppers with Sprint.
I love the way you guys think. Well, we're crazy enough, you can probably imagine we've thought about everything. So I don't have a time. I don't know how long that'll be. It's going to not need a driver quicker than it'll probably be bulk seed. But that guy's sitting in the truck anyway. Everybody's telling me in my team, who's going to run it? I said, the guy sitting in the truck all day is going to run it. What else is he doing? So, and if you're worried about the dirt, Brad, we can put a cab on him, can't we? That's right. So the way it's designed, there's a receiver on each end of the planter so you're never in the dirt. You guys are born on the farm. You know better than riding in a dirt cloud. So you'll be either on the left or the right side of the planter, either going north or south. You'll figure it out. You're not going to ride in dirt. I'm not going to ride in dirt. I wear contacts, so I know I won't be.
Look at that. I just had to have him verify because I always get accused of planting a anhydrous question that Greg hates to answer.
Every meeting, John has an
So I had to show him that there's a legit question here about, what about pre-plant anhydrous?
What about it? Well, I don't know why you would use it, besides I guess you could say it's cheaper. I don't know if it is cheaper. If you have bulk storage or if you buy right, if you buy early with a relationship, if you're ag chem, I think we take that off the course, the price per ton. I just don't like what it does to the soil. Maybe I'm a purist. I think if you're going to go out, you say in the fall, I'm going to put on 100 to 120 pounds, I don't have a problem with that. Where I have a problem is where you guys are using 225 to 250, and your CECs are 15 here in the local area. 11 to 23. The highest I have are 23. There's a lot of 11 to 15. So you take your CEC and you take it times 10, okay? That's the most nitrogen you can hold on your dinner plate, called your soil profile. If you're out neighbor of mine and you're putting on 225 this fall, and I drive by, I don't grin, I just kind of feel sorry for you. Because the most you're going to capture for the corn next year is 150. Unless you tell me you got Iowa soil with 25 to 30 CECs. Maryland's here. I talked to him ahead of the meeting. His are 3, his maximum is 8 in the Chesapeake Bay area. And so they're regulated very tight. So if you're telling me you're going to come in the fall and put on 100 pounds and N-Serve, I'm fine. I have no problem. I worry about the biological effect around the knife. Where that anhydrous gas hits it, it will destroy the soil structure. That's just a fact. You don't have to argue and say, well, Greg, since when you become such a little earth muffin? It's just a fact. That's how they built runways in World War II. They just took anhydrous and they just went through about 5 times and they had concrete. I used to laugh. There was an agronomist that come to us in '87, and he said, you guys are using anhydrous, and I'll show you where the track was from last fall. And I said, oh, yeah? Go ahead, Mr. Smart Guy. He went out with a spade and started digging. Pretty soon he brought a big lump out that looked like a doorstop, and then he made fun of me the whole week. He laid it in a bucket of water for 3 days, and then the third day they took a hammer and split it, and the water had only gone into that big lump of clay about 1/4 of an inch, and I never used anhydrous since. Because I think there's ways that we manage around it. It's not because I sell it. I would have my nitrogen on the planter, and I would have a wide drop, and I wouldn't look back. If you want to just win and you want to be simple, I don't know how to make it any more simpler than that. So, was that too hard on anhydrous, guys?
For you, no, it was pretty good.
So I held back.
Pretty balanced for you, yeah.
Well, John, you used it 1 year.
Yes.
Tell them your story. How much did you lose? Because I come over soil scan. We had a little fun with you. How much did you lose? How much did you put on? You put on 140, correct?
It was 110.
Oh, 110.
Yep.
And come
110
spring, how much
weed and
was?
feed.
And then how much of this did you lose?
About 80% of it.
80%.
It was a wet year.
So if I was Potter, the banker, I would give you the snake eye. I would be looking at you.
You keep forgetting this was test strips, not a whole field.
Okay.
So we salvaged it.
Okay.
We had wide drop.
Yeah, we come back in, and I remember that.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, there's another anhydrous question coming in. Thank you very much.
So now you're baiting the crowd.
I got to have some fun. But we'll talk about wide drop undercover on a single tank versus wide drop undercover with dual tank. It's a good question. It's a long question. It's should I invest as a custom applicator in auto steer, height control? If I only have a single tank, are guys really wanting to do 2 products at once?
Here's kind of where I'm coming down on. I've had dual tank for 3 years, and our program was we're going to come out the planter, and then we're going to come at V10 to V12 with wide drop. Then I'm going to come back at tassel, brown tassel, and I'm going to have fungicide and an unknown amount of wide drop again to finish the race. The problem has been the planter band and the single pass of wide drop have been so efficient, we're always stopping at about 180 pounds for the year with tremendous yields. I'm not coming back with the second pass of wide drop, which we were figuring is going to be about a 25-pound rate the same time we did fungicide. So I spent $30,000 on Hagee's and Miller's to have the dual tank. So we got a 1,600-gallon tank and a 60-40 split. And my banker says, where's the return? Because I don't have it. So my sprayer next year, we still have a dual tank this year. My sprayer next year will be a single tank again. I don't want to rain on it. I think it's got a ton of capability. It's pretty sweet if you were going to do nitrogen and fungicide at the same time. That's a pretty sweet system. But it's pretty hard to pay for it, $30,000 extra dollars for that system.
So that anhydrous question was, what about anhydrous and side dress? Is it the best form?
Well, I don't like where it's positioned. I don't like it in the center of the road. It just takes the roots too long to get to it. I mean, it's a better form, possibly, but it's going to take a long time for a root to get that nitrogen, that water. Nitrogen moves vertically. It does not, if I poured water on this carpet, it's going to spread out or on the concrete floor. Nitrogen moves vertical. It does not spread out. So when you side dress, we can go in with the soil scan on that hydrous band that was put on June 7th, and we can track it all year long. And 3 inches over, the nitrates are no higher than it is 10 inches over. It's all hot, right down in single. So the root has to grow out and get into it to get the bang for the buck. So I'm not a huge fan of using it in side dress.
There's a couple questions I think out here. We got one here. We got a guy there trying to put his arm up.
Yes.
Go with you first.
Okay. Which way are we going? Right here in the center?
Do you have any thoughts about encapsulating like N30O on the seed itself? Would that be a possibility?
You know, we've looked at the encapsulated seed. I've planted some before. You know, there was a time when we thought in the early days of precision that if we could get every seed perfectly round, we could really figure out, we'll encapsulate it with some nitrogen and fungicide and the seed coating. And the seed coatings were pretty weird on how they dissolved down. It was all triggered by heat and moisture, and we saw some pretty erratic emergence. Remember, all corn, high-yielding corn, I don't know what Dave Hewlett's corn looked like when it came up, but I'm going to hedge my bets that when you saw the first spike out, within 12 hours, all his corn was up. For it to be 542 bushel, I'm just telling you, there's no mistakes. And so all the emergence, the age of corn is critical to production. The most, I would get really nervous after 24 hours spread. If you told me you have 48 hours or greater from plant 1 to plant 3 coming out of the ground, you're in for a tough go. So encapsulated seed created a little bit of uncertainty when that capsulation was going to melt down and start to let the moisture into the pericarp to let it go. So what I have seen actually raised more questions in my mind than anything of saying, how are we going to live through an erratic emergence? Agronomists will tell you if you can get it within 12 hours, you are in the driver's seat. I mean, it's exciting. That's what we look for. That's why we pay attention to where the moisture is, the planting depth, downforce, closing. That's why I drag a chain. Chain is the simplest insurance you can ever drag. If you had a field that had a tough area of low ground and you kind of had this bathtub ring, you know, this is all dry, but there's this heavy residue in what we call a bathtub ring. And you're planting through that and you hit that mud for just 50 feet, maybe 25 feet, and you slot, that chain will save you. It'll drag that shut and you can grow. You can't grow corn in sunlight. It'll leaf out. I mean, you gotta be able to cover the trench. And so I think that future's there. What are you going to charge me for it? You know, if I can come into the planter and put 2 simple bands on next to this seed, and you're going to charge me 3x for an encapsulated nitrogen solution on the seed, you know, there's where we have to do the math. I love new technology. I'm all in to test it and see where it'll be. The lettuce industry does it well in California, but you don't want to know what their seeding cost is. They plant it on a tape. Every seed's positioned on the tape. The tape has everything it needs on it, and so it doesn't get any better than that. The rolls are pretty big, though, you think about a corn planter. So, great question. I like the way you're thinking. So the future's going to be the more technology we can do. So Dash, when you know where the seed is and you can start to feed each individual plant, then the industry is going to come alert with new chemicals, new processes, and new products that are very expensive, but you only need a short amount of it. Like 1 cc out of a cattle syringe is what we're talking about. Amazing things can happen. Great question. Tim?
How many units of N is required to set the number of kernels round and length? You know, you're talking about going in with your planter and then you're waiting until V7 or V8, V10. So what are we required to get the proper kernels round and the length so that we can come back with the Y drops later?
So V5 is when we set how many around, okay? So you can't run it out here. If you run it out there, you will always know, because the butt of the ear will have 18, and then 1.5 inches up, it'll go to 16. And that's a 20 bushel hit. And so if you run it out, if it has a bad day then, that's really costly. So I'm going to tell you, you're probably going to need what the kernel itself has in it, plus I'd like to see at least 50 units on. That's kind of a known in the industry. You'd want to have about 50 units on. But if you run this out, and you go from 18 to 16, or 16 to 12, I've seen that. That is you can't overcome that. Now length is all about what? July and August. And so every kernel in length to you is worth 6 bushel. So when you saw that one slide where you saw that urea and you saw about this much bare cob, there was probably 12, I would say 12 kernels less times 6. That's serious. If I came in your field, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pull down some shucks. I'm going to look to see where the erosion around are scrambled. You've got to have clearing to the butt. There's a picture in there. I don't know if Tim's in the room or not. Why do I pay him if he's not here? He's inventing something. That's a good thing, right, John? So there's a picture in there of a corn that's scrambled really bad. It would take me a long time to get there, probably just going backwards. But you look at that corn had a bad day. And it lost 2 kernels. And it's scrambled. It's a definite line. And so you and I are responsible for that. But this here, if I come in your field and it's August 1st, and you blew off 8 kernels, and that can happen of hot nights. As soon as it gets over 80 degrees, you're in trouble at night. You can't raise corn at 84 degrees in nighttime temperatures. In 2011, we had 35 days in a row where it not got below 80 in Iowa and Illinois. 53 bushel we lost. We documented it because we blew off tip. Heat blows it off. Remember, corn all day long fills up its reservoir. That stalk fills up, and then at night, it takes a deep sigh of relief, and the sun goes down, and all that energy goes out to the ear. If it gets 79 to 80 degrees, no energy goes out to the ear. The plant respirates, and it takes it all just to stay alive for tomorrow. So that's why you worry on warm nights. So when I feed cows at night, and I look at my iPhone, and it says 84 degrees, that's a bad night in a cornfield. So those are things you can't control, but you need to understand it. So you want enough nitrogen to make sure you don't have a bad day when we hand off to the crown root from the seedling root. And I'm very comfortable with 50 being there. John, we don't want to hold too long.
Yeah, we'll do 2 more. So anybody got one here that isn't haven't texted in?
What, another hydrous question?
What irrigation do you like, the drip, tip strips, or the
Well, the pivots are easy compared to drip. The drip is an ugly baby putting it in. I mean, you just really don't like it. So you're going at 18 to 20 inches deep because you don't want the rippers to hit it, and they will hit it if you rip twice. I know. Well, let's just say the young man around the ripper knows. I found out later. So you don't, because you just sink in. And you say, well, if it's set at 12 inches, how did it get to 20 inches? I don't know, but at 80 lines in a row, did know. It cut every one of them. So, so we're on 40-inch centers, and it's a Cadillac. I mean, it's expensive. It's probably going to be 1.5 times more expensive than a pivot, okay? We spent as much as $2,200 an acre on some of the deluxe systems. I'm going to say it's more like $1,800 an acre for drip, and you should be able to put a pivot in pretty easy, a larger pivot for $850 to $900, depending if you put a corner on it or not, and how much electronics you put to it. So it's about 2x, but man, does it raise corn. I mean, it's 80 to 100 bushel more where the drip is compared to dry land. It's real. I got friends all over the country running it. We're kind of on hold where we're at. We're over 1,000 acres of drip, and we're just saying we want to hold, and then when I ever get an engineer free, we're going to reinvent it. But I just can't get anybody free. We're doing other good stuff. But there's some things that need to be done. I mean, you're all going to be at your armpit fixing. And 80 acres will usually have about 9 breaks a year, just mice bites, something come apart, and then you drain it in the fall. We run a really high compressor. We make sure we never go above 30 PSI, and we hook into the system. We open up the flushes on the far end of the field, and we blow every bit of water out of the system of air, one section at a time. And so a lot of our sections are anywhere from 3 acres to 16 acres to a section. So for research. Most of our drip tapes, every 120 feet is a different zone. Because we do 60-foot planters and we do tests. So we try water, not water. And it's interesting. Drip tape moisture will migrate 6 rows over. I've seen it. So if we do the test of dry land drip versus a drip running, we have to leave 6 rows. It'll feed. It's amazing how water and roots will migrate over. You can just see it. Right now, we're putting in pivots. We're not putting in drip. A lot. It's extreme. It's basically 98 to 99% efficient. It's just as sweet as it can get. And you can spoon feed in quickly. I mean, I can put 40 pounds of in on if I had to in 1/3 of an inch of water in 8 hours, a whole field. So where a pivot, we don't use nitrogen in our pivots, we use Y-drop. We quit doing nitrification in the pivot. It's just so much more efficient with Y-drop. So all of our seed fields, we Y-drop. We water, we use water obviously, but we don't put nitrogen into the system anymore. I don't think we did 1 acre last year. Everything was Y-drop. I'm getting long, John. I'm getting nervous because I think we're holding them too long.
A couple notes before last questions. Cindy and the families restocked the desserts, and there's more food up there, so make sure you fill up. These seat cushions, you want to take those home with you? As many as you'd like. And I think that's it.
Good.
So the last question, and it's a popular question. We had a similar one last night. This one's a little more specific. Have you ever tried the Yetter track till for pinch rows? And does it work? So that pinch row track compaction question.
Well, there's no question pinch rows are real, and tracks eliminate that, but tracks are expensive. I don't know what it would be. I was talking with some of the guys from Indiana. Mark, I believe you said it's about $28,000 on the planters you're working with, roughly 28 to 30. It's $40,000 Camoplast tracks. A 26-inch track on our 20-inch planter is about $40K, and it pays over time. That planter you saw that we were running there was a wheel planter, and it was set up. Those are big flotation tires, and that's a pinch row that you saw where remember the red streak, and then it was green, green, red, green, green, red. That was a tractor pulling that planter, but that planter was really super heavy, and that was wheels. So I think it's real. The tracks are an advantage, but you have to have a lot of acres to make it pay, and they wear out fast. I was telling Mike Evans, I wouldn't probably use the 18-inch planter tracks. I would go to a wider track, a 24 or 26. The 18s, you can wear them out in 1 year if you're doing road work. They wear fast, and they're expensive. And that'll make your heart pound when you see the wear on them.
So you guys sent a lot more questions. We won't be able to take them all tonight, but Greg has agreed to stay here until every last question's answered, to just go up there and hound him as soon as he's finished. So, Greg?
Well, thank you very much. I'm honored you come. Man, what a treat to have you here. It means a lot to us. The white shirts are available. You can get a lot of good information from these young men. They're dynamite. 360 runs because of our super, super employees. So take some time to visit with them. Be safe. Have a great week and a great spring. Thank you from all my heart. See ya.